I want to start off by making sure that you hear this if you hear nothing else. I do not have this all figured out. I am not saying that I have the answer, the most correct answer. And as always, I am not saying that I am perfect. Our natural state is love. We always come into conflict when we're fighting against what is natural. When we fight against what we know our path is, for example, you feel that conflict. You know your soul is nudging you to go do certain things, follow a certain path, but you're conflicted, and so you stay stuck. Apply that in every other scenario. This is the Energy Within podcast, helping you to embrace your weirdness, find the confidence to be your true self, and step into your soul's purpose. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki master teacher, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and you can probably hear either them and or the games and the TV stuff that they're watching right now, toys that they're playing with. So bear with me if this is your first time here and you can hear the background noise. Sometimes that's just normal. #mom life. So this typically doesn't matter, and it probably still doesn't matter, but I feel compelled to tell you that what you're hearing is actually a re-record of my first attempt at this. I just completely deleted everything and I'm starting over. Not because I think I didn't say what I wanted to or how I wanted to. Well, I guess kind of how. I usually do the majority of my podcasts off the cuff, even my interviews. After the first set of interviews that I ever did way back towards the beginning of the podcast, I started not only feeling more confident with myself and my ability to do an interview off the cuff, but I really just wanted it to feel more conversational because, just total side note, I noticed that as I would listen to the pieces that had been recorded before and after each of the interview podcasts, not that they felt completely different, but you could tell there was a little bit more of relaxation there, a little bit more looseness, a little more conversation style. And not that the interviews themselves didn't already have that. I feel like they did, but I wanted a little bit more of that, if that makes sense. So it's very rare that I go in with many pre-planned questions. And in my own solo shows, it's rare that I go in with a list of things to read off or a list of points to hit, unless it's something bigger, something that I really want to make sure that I'm hitting everything because I am specifically trying to give you points or tips. And I thought I could do this one more off the cuff, and it still is going to be mostly, but I did have some points and a direction that I wanted to hit. So I felt like my first record got a little long-winded and convoluted. And I also read a little more of my book that I'm going to reference. And hopefully this time I have my thoughts together a little better. So here we go. So I'm not actually entirely sure where to start with it, but I think I'll start with telling you that the main book I'm going to reference here is Conversations with God. And I guess I'll give you just a tiny snippet of the backstory too. I recall hearing about these books when I was younger, when they first came out, because I believe it was the late 90s, mid to late 90s maybe, when they came out. And I had a little nudge, a little curiosity about reading them, but I just never did, never got around to buying them, and then forgot about them, I'm sure. And maybe 6 years ago now, 6 or 7, because I know I started reading them while I was pregnant with my older son, who's 5 now. But I had actually purchased them, I think, the summer before I finally started reading them. We were on vacation, and we were going through a bunch of different antique stores. And in the first one of the first ones that we were in where I saw the books, it was a bundle of 3. There's actually 4. And then there's like some side books, but there's 4 main books, but 3 that really, I guess you could whittle down to being the core books if you're following. And I saw this bundle of 3, and if I remember correctly, it was $9 for all 3. And I looked at it and I really thought about it, and I'm like, I may have also thought, I'm not sure, but I may have also thought that maybe I didn't want all 3. And maybe when we got home, I would look the first one up and just buy it myself and just have it at that. So we leave. I don't remember if it was the very next store, but I know it was very shortly thereafter that we're in another store. And I see the bundle of 3 again, this time for $6. So I'm like, okay, I hear ya. And I bought them. And I consider reading those books, particularly the first one, the start of this entire more spiritual journey that I've been on. I didn't go in expecting, honestly, to get answers to questions that I had always kept to myself. But that's what ended up happening. And every time that happened, I was like, oh my God, I always wondered about that. I'm not weird. I'm not the only one. And I'm not going to get into it, but I know there's debate about whether or not those books are true. I'm just telling you that I believe they are. If we accept that there are multiple paths to get to God, if we accept that anyone can talk to God and God will talk to anybody, which is what I believe, who is to say that that wasn't God talking in those books? I believe in my heart and in my soul that it was. Is it infallible? Maybe not. Do I still have questions? Yes, including on the topic that we're going to talk about today. But I always knew from when I started reading that first book, there was going to be a point where I was going to be talking about the concepts that awakened things in me, that answered things for me in these books. I just didn't know how, when, or why. I made a somewhat feeble attempt, a genuine but feeble attempt at doing a live video on my Facebook years ago, I think while I was still in the middle of reading the first book, because I was so blown away. I think that first concept about us being pieces of God versus children of God, it's a little different. But it was just such an amazing concept to me. It made me feel so much more loved and embraced and connected to God, thinking of it that way. And I wanted to share that, but I don't know how many people saw that video, and I don't even know how well I expressed it. I don't know that it came off the way that I wanted to or had the impact that I was hoping that it would, because I got done with the video and I'm like, I don't even think that I said exactly what I meant to say or conveyed it the way that I meant to. And I left it alone from that point. I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it. But then here my journey continues, things compound, things start tying together, and now here we are. So after I deleted that first episode, the first version of this episode, because it was long and convoluted, here we go, starting out with a long and convoluted story. But we're done with that now. Thank you for listening. And we're going to move into this rather challenging concept. I want to start off by making sure that you hear this if you hear nothing else. I do not have this all figured out. I am not saying that I have the answer, the most correct answer. And as always, I am not saying that I am perfect. I think getting into this whole topic of whether or not there is a right or a wrong, if there is good or bad, we first need to accept the truth that nothing is that black and white. It just isn't. It can't be. I don't believe that it ever will be. Maybe in paradise, in utopia, that's possible. But I don't know that we should expect that to be an outcome. So the short answer, is there really no right and no wrong? The short answer is yes. But the long answer is yes, but. I wanted to pick up this topic because, one, I'm finally feeling, I'm not fully confident. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm a little scared to put this out there. But I'm feeling a little more confident because I continue to grow more solid in my beliefs and moving out of the guilt and the shame. And but I've also seen this topic come up a lot lately with people calling each other out, people that I respect calling other people out because they preach this idea that there's no right and no wrong. And I guess on some level, I want to clarify where I stand on that and just share my perception, and you take with it what makes sense for you. And if none of it makes sense for you, that's fine. I am not here to convince anyone of anything. I am not here to get you to agree with me. I'm just simply sharing what is clearly my own opinion and my own perception. There are so many of us that even with each issue that we can all fight about, there's truly more than two sides, because there are more than two of us. There are billions of us. And we each have a different life experience, different things that we were taught as we grew up, different things that we have either held on to as we've gotten older or rejected as we've gotten older. Our experiences have shaped us differently. You can look at people who grew up in the same household with the same experiences, the same events that happened, the same parents, and they have completely different perspectives on it. It shaped them in completely different ways. So the way we all interpret something and the reasons we interpret them differently are all so varied and so different. There cannot be one blanket to cover it all. So before I get into what I believe are the caveats to this, I did pull a few cards that I'd like to share. And I pulled a lot. So I'm not going to read the entirety of each explanation, but rather stick to a few bullet points. What happened was I pulled from both the Starseed Oracle and my Angel Tarot deck, and I got 4 cards from each because I just kept feeling like after I flipped one card, it was the next one too, and the next one too, and the next one too. And that, again, was without looking at them and being like, oh yeah, I think that one. It was no. I feel like this one here that's flipped over that I can't see is also meant for this. So I flip it over and go, oh yeah. So I believe that the ones from the Starseed Oracle are really more about maintaining a bit of an openness to not only this idea, but just any idea that we encounter with other people, especially where there's a difference of opinion. So here we have the void is the first one. And it says, everything and nothing exists in the void. It's where all life begins and ends. The void is where faith lives. The message of the void is to surrender to the unknown, to allow the fertile darkness of nothingness to nourish the new seeds growing within you, regardless of whether you know what they'll one day become. You're being called to surrender to the mystery of what's next, to hand over your control and trust that just because you can't see what's happening beneath the surface, it doesn't mean things aren't at work. And the void often surfaces at the end of a chapter or life phase, when we're ready to let go of all that we know and identify with. And this call to surrender, if you heard the episode a couple episodes back about this message of surrender and letting go of control, it's hard, it's scary. We all want to make sure that things are going the way we want them to. But sometimes, while it's also the most difficult thing, the easiest way to make sure that they go the way that they're supposed to for the highest good is to let go of control. Let go of this idea of needing to control everything. I don't want to get too much into this because I talked about it on the last episode, but I don't believe that letting go necessarily means you shouldn't stand up for what you believe in, that you shouldn't speak up, that you need to be all love and light and quiet, and that's what makes you peaceful and evolved. I don't believe that at all. I believe that, without going into it again, that if we can source everything we do from love, real, actual, pure, high vibrational love, not cheesy stuff, then we have the opportunity for a better outcome than using lower vibrational emotions as tools. So listen to episode 145 if you want more on that. The next card is Jump In, Andromedan Energy, Adventure, and Say Yes to Change. Could that mean being open to maybe changing your mind? I don't know. It is believed that Andromedan starseeds are a group of beings who love their freedom. Very acceptable. They have a strong willingness and ability to change and go with the flow. There's your surrender message again. Perhaps you have a significant goal or opportunity ahead of you, If so, you're being guided to jump in. Don't wait for permission. Don't stall until you feel ready. Take a deep breath, a good old run up, and jump right on in. You're already facing the right direction. The only thing left to do is leap. You'll figure out the details as you go along. Things may not always be smooth sailing. However, it's the rougher seas that teach us how to sail with glory, and once you know that, you can navigate any sea, ocean, or storm. You have to let go in order to successfully ride with the waves instead of this constant fight and tension against it. We also got the Seas of Mintaka, seeing potential, bringing unconsciousness to light. This card represents the crystalline clarity of potential and possibility. It's about the ability and choice to see the potential in all people and situations. This is me talking here, sourcing everything from love. That's the only way you can do that. Mintakans are thought to have been a galactic race who saw the light in everything and everyone. If this card appears, it's a very positive sign that things are working out for the highest potential of all involved. It's a very uplifting, light-filled card that brings great harmony, contentment, and positive outcomes. If we can surrender and trust, this is me, if we can surrender and trust that there is more light on this planet, and the light will win in the end, the light already has won, we're just waiting to see it play out, then if you can believe that, you can have that trust to let go of that need for control, which I believe is part of what keeps causing, not the main reason, but part of what keeps causing all of this division and conflict. And trust me, I'm not this kumbaya, can't we all get along, let's love and light everybody into utopia kind of person. I know that's not possible. I'm not that naive. But again, talking about the source of our words and our actions and being open and living our own highest potential the best we can, showing people what's possible rather than trying to shock them into what's possible is going to have a better outcome in the end. And I really do believe that even though I call that the long game, it's actually the short game. And true enough, we also get the card, You've Got the Love. And real similar here, the Hadarians are believed to be beacons of pure, unconditional love who see love in all people and situations. This does go into a little bit of establishing boundaries with your energy, knowing that you don't have to give everyone your energy, you don't have to allow everyone into your energy, but I believe there's still got to be a source from love, both love for yourself and love for the best intention of others. I'm not going to get too much into that because that's not the point of this. But what I do want to mention that's interesting about the Angel Tarot deck is when I went next to pull cards from that one, I actually got a nudge to just pull cards for me first. And they were just, for me, more confirmation that I need to keep taking action, not give up, believe in myself, but mostly just keep taking action because it's easy for me to fall out of action. But what's interesting is that these cards are from all over the deck, different suits. And then after that, I pulled 4 cards for the podcast. And this deck has been shuffled multiple times. And I shuffled it again even after I pulled the cards for me. And I still managed to pull 4 Archangel cards. And 2 of them, Michael and Jophiel, are ones that I call on in every single Reiki session and Akashic Record session that I do. Archangel Michael for protection and Archangel Jophiel because without going into all the details, I believe and I have gotten signs that she is my personal archangel. But we first got Justice, Archangel Ragwell, fair and just decisions, do what you know is right, stand up for your beliefs. So here's that encouragement to follow your heart, do what you believe is right. And this is going to factor in a little bit more as we get into the caveats real soon. But again, I want to add that in about doing it all from a source of love. Then we have the Wheel, Archangel Michael, a time of positive change, a situation suddenly moves forward, fortune is on your side. I believe that to be trusting that the light is winning. It exposes darkness first, and then you've got to deal with what was in the darkness. But we're anchoring in the light, and we're moving forward. We also got unity, Archangel Sandalphon, traditional viewpoints or methods, spiritual organizations, seek out mentors and like-minded friends. Your boundaries here could involve finding the groups of people that align with you, not in a way to push anybody else away from you, but just so you have that comfort of knowing that you are not alone. If you heard my last episode, not going to get into that here, but go back and listen to that one. And traditional viewpoints or method could be both ways of maybe listening more and understanding at least the basis behind traditional viewpoints and methods that have been out there. And then also maybe the need to challenge them, but again, from a source of love for the highest good. And the last one is ego, Archangel Jophiel, a false sense of entrapment, being overly focused on material things, negative or fear-based thoughts. So I take that to mean, even though it's talking about being overly focused on material things, I feel like that's also a reference to the hyper-focus on all of the issues that keep dividing us. Because it's, like I said before in the last episode, just this revolving door lately, it seems like, more so than it ever has been in the past. Just one thing after another. And not that we shouldn't deal with them. I'm not saying we should ignore anything or pretend that things are okay when they're not. Not at all. But how much of our focus should continue to be on this divide versus actually trying to bring everybody together? I don't know. I'm not going to say too much more about that. That's not the point of this episode. Maybe we'll talk about it in the future. I don't know. But just food for thought there. And negative or fear-based thoughts. If we keep living in these negative and fear-based thoughts and keep letting them drive our actions and our words and things like that, versus coming from a place of love, then we run the risk of not moving forward. And Archangel Jophiel is the archangel of beautiful thoughts. It says she helps us experience beautiful emotions and think beautiful thoughts. So call upon Jophiel whenever you need a boost in how you feel about yourself, your life, and the world. So I'm going to leave those cards at that. Hopefully those were helpful. But here are the caveats that you've been waiting for, for there not being a right or a wrong. Caveat number 1 is that we are supposed to decide both personally and collectively what is right and wrong or good and bad. And the concept of there being no right or wrong made sense to me in the beginning because I was taking it simply at first on that personal level. Whenever I've made the reference to there being no right or wrong on this podcast, you'll hear that I always meant it in terms of your emotions are not right or wrong. The things that you're feeling are not right or wrong, or good or bad. You haven't messed up if you're feeling a lower vibrational frequency emotion. That the nudge that you're feeling, the path that you want to go down doesn't make you right or wrong. I don't know that I've ever said it out loud. The only caveats with that for me were just making sure that you're not harming anybody. And we don't need to get into this, but yeah, people have different ideas of what it means to harm someone. But if we can ever agree on some basics here, as long as you're truly not harming or traumatizing anybody, then follow your path. But where I started to get tripped up was starting to think of things on the collective level. What about the things that really are horrific and horrible and awful and should never happen to anybody? I'm not going to list specifics here because, again, we all have different ideas. But I just couldn't accept that idea that I keep saying that we don't have to do. I couldn't accept sitting back and just accepting. How many more times can I say the word accept? That some of these things shouldn't be labeled good or bad. I can't accept that they just are, because then that invites more questions about, well, what do we do about it? Why can we do something about it? And if not, why not? So then I recently, since it's been a few years, I started rereading the first Conversations with God book. I recently completed it. I've moved on to the second one. But I found something in the first one that started to help me understand and feel a little better about this. And it's the caveat that I already mentioned, that we are supposed to decide, again, both personally and collectively, what is right and what is wrong. That doesn't mean it's an easy thing to do or that we always get it right, for lack of a better word, but we're supposed to. In fact, it specifically says in the book, this is a direct quote, the biggest evil would therefore be to declare nothing evil at all, because it's by defining what we declare is good and bad, right or wrong, that also helps define who we are, both personally and collectively. We're here to create and experience who we are, and we can only do that by defining these things for us, by having our values, by having morals, by declaring what we say is good or bad. Now, I still have questions, especially with this next caveat. I have not figured out all of the answers, but here's the other one. Regardless of whether or not you believe that there are consequences in the afterlife, there are consequences here in the present on this planet for your actions. You can and do impact other people both positively and negatively by what you do. And while we do need to pursue our own journey, it is important to evaluate how our actions might affect other people. And that goes back to the idea of sourcing everything from love. So it says in the book here, this is the second book, in regards to all events and all experiences, it is what we think of them, do about them, be in response to them that gives them meaning. There's also a longer discussion. It's hard to summarize these because these concepts are so big and we can literally have days or weeks long conversations about like each individual page in all of these books. But collective ideas of what is right and what is wrong, you can look back just simply in recorded history of how these things have changed. At one point, the collective overriding idea was that certain things were good, and then all of a sudden they were bad. Or the reverse, they were bad, and then all of a sudden they weren't. And maybe some things have gone back and forth and back and forth. Maybe some things we can only find one switch. But right there is part of the answer. Whether or not you can do something or should do anything about the things that you don't think are right, you're supposed to go ahead and do something about it because that's how you define who you are as a person, what's important to you, how you want to experience your life, and the same thing on a collective level. So there's one other part that I want to read because it just goes back again, specifically and directly to the idea of doing everything from a source of love. When you express your truth with love, negative and damaging results rarely occur, and when they do, it is usually because someone else has chosen to experience your truth in a negative or damaging way. Remember this. It is not nearly so important how well a message is received as how well it is sent. You cannot take responsibility for how well another accepts your truth. You can only ensure how well it is communicated. I'm going to read just a little more. All negativity need not be shared with the person about whom it is felt. It is only necessary to communicate these feelings to the other when failure to do so would compromise your integrity or cause another to believe an untruth. Negativity is never a sign of ultimate truth, even if it seems like your truth at the moment. It may arise out of an unhealed part of you. In fact, always it does. So I don't know the most effective way to break that down any further and explain it any further. So hopefully that holds some meaning there for you that is helpful or insightful. And I still don't really know the best way to wrap up my thoughts or sum them up because this is a convoluted and very tough issue, or topic, I should say. But I think it does help to trust this idea that we are supposed to define what is right and what is wrong. How much of it we're supposed to fight about, I don't know. And in terms of consequences in the afterlife, I still do have questions there. Because, not to go too far into this, but if you read the Conversations with God books, you'll see, or I should say read, where God talks about that we are literal pieces of God, and this idea that we have free will. And is it really free will if we get punished for choosing one path or action or whatever over another? And there's another whole discussion about God's will in the second book. And that's hilarious. I grabbed the book because I wanted to see if I could find it quickly. And I literally opened up to the exact page. And it's not even one of the pages that I dog-eared. So I guess I'm supposed to read it here. So the author is questioning, but I thought your will was my will. How can I not do your will if it's the same as mine? And that's because in the first book, there's discussion about how God wants whatever we want. So if you choose that you're happy going to your daily job, coming home, sitting on the couch, or being with family, and having your couple weeks of vacation off every year and your weekends off, and you like things that way, and that is perfect for you, and you feel that you are either living your purpose and or you're simply happy that way, that's what God wants for you. If you feel like you're made for bigger things and you want to pursue that, you change your mind, that's what God wants for you. It's like sending your children out to play. You don't care what they play as long as they're not getting hurt and they're not hurting each other or other people. At the end of the day, you want them to be happy. But it's an interesting question here. How can I not do your will if it's the same as mine? God's answer is, when I say your will is my will, that is not the same thing as saying my will is your will. If you did my will all the time, there would be nothing more for you to do to achieve enlightenment. The process would be over. You would already be there. So to say that my will is your will is demonstrably inaccurate. On the other hand, your will is my will, first because I know it, second because I accept it, he gave us free will, third because I praise it, fourth because I love it, fifth because I own it and call it my own. This means you have free will to do as you wish, and that I make your will mine through unconditional love. Now, for my will to be yours, you would have to do the same. First, you would have to know it. Second, you would have to accept it. Third, you would have to praise it. Fourth, you would have to love it. Finally, you would have to call it your own. So I'm not going to get into fully interpreting that right now. Just take it for what it means for you. Maybe we'll talk about it and deconstruct it more later. I think the main point may be that we have free will. We should not feel ashamed about using our free will. But at the same time, yes, we should choose higher. We should always seek to act purely out of love, which is bringing us closer to acting from God's will, our true nature, our true selves. Our natural state is love. We always come into conflict when we're fighting against what is natural. When we fight against what we know our path is, for example, you feel that conflict. You know your soul is nudging you to go do certain things, follow a certain path, but you're conflicted. And so you stay stuck. Apply that in every other scenario. But briefly here, I do still have questions because of the really evil, actually truly horrific things that happen in the world. I don't have an answer to this, but let's just say it out loud. What if we don't witness those consequences coming down for the people who do those things? What if it happens, but they don't experience them or perceive them as consequences and they just keep right on going? I don't know if there is an answer to that. I don't know if I'll find the answer to that. I'm not going to try to figure it out right here and now, but that's just one example. I still have questions. So even after all this discussion, which I guess still got a little long-winded, even after all this discussion, I still have questions. I'm still not implying that I have the answer or the right answer or the only answer, but I do feel like for me personally, this helps me understand a lot of things a lot better. So that's my reason for sharing and hoping that it does the same for you. And as always, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, everybody, like I said in the beginning, we all have different experiences and different perceptions, and that's why we all have different realities and different truths. And I don't think that it's fair or right, personal opinion, I suppose, to tell someone else that they are wrong or stupid or whatever for having a different belief. All we can do is hope for open conversations that don't turn into full-on arguments or screaming matches, because that's not the helpful part. Civil debates, I suppose, would be the best to hope for at its worst. And to live our own lives as the best expression of our highest selves that we possibly can, which may fluctuate on a daily basis, and that's okay. Having perfection as the goal isn't going to help any of us either. But just trusting that we're always doing our best and that what our best looks like on every day is going to be different. And if I can add, understanding that convoluted topics, while they may have a much more simple answer than we're allowing to come through, they can't be solved in a single sentence response that's really, in essence, again, telling other people who don't think the same way that they are stupid for their belief. It really does, again, boil down to my main message of how we should be going through our lives. The best way, like I already said, to create the change that we want to see is to be it. And I know that's cliche. It's become cliche, but it's true. And that's why it's cliche. That's why it gets referenced so often. Like it mentioned in that quote from the second Conversations with God book, we can't control how others perceive or receive our truth. The best we can do is seek to communicate it in the best possible way. And the best possible way is sourcing it from love, living as an example, and trusting that the people who are meant to see you as an example will. Everybody is not for everyone. The people who are meant to find you and see you and see and feel and experience your example and allow it to mold and shape them into their highest and best selves, those people will find you. Surrender, love, and trust. So maybe this still came out convoluted and long-winded. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you going through this, hopefully, conversation with me. So reach out and let me know if something resonated, if it awakened something in you. I'm grateful that you're here for this. This is an ongoing journey for all of us, and we're all doing our best. Kumbaya, can't we all just get along? That said, before I wrap up, allow me once again, as always, to invite you to do a few things here. First, follow me on Instagram. I am Carrie Jokala. That is one way for you to send me your message, to share your favorite part or most inspiring part of this episode or any episode, and tag me so that I see it. Jump into the Energy Within Facebook group. I sincerely hope to be doing more Reiki and card pulls in there very soon, perhaps even the day after this particular episode releases. And take a look at the website. If you are interested in a Reiki session, an Akashic Records session, the Akashic Records money healing sessions, an Oracle card reading, group activities, group Reiki and group card readings for your group. That's all on there. Reach out if you have any questions. And by the time this is released, I expect to have already announced the date for my upcoming masterclass on energy and how you can move energy, align with your highest frequencies, be your own healer, and use all of this to also fulfill your purpose and increase your confidence and so much more. If you are interested in that, make sure that you sign up and also that you join the Energy Within Facebook group. And I believe that is where I can wrap this up. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. I hope you can feel the love in that statement. And I will see you next time.